Take one.
Welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, and today I'm joined by a longtime friend, a former colleague, and a true artist of the stage, Keith Cassidy. As a former professor of theater at Gardner-Webb University and a seasoned actor and director, Keith brings decades of experience, of passion, and perspective to the craft of performance. So in this particular episode today, we're going to do a deep dive into what makes acting truly perfect. From iconic performances to under-the-radar gems, Keith may be sharing some of his thoughts of some actors and roles that define the art form. And we might even get to rewind to get a glimpse of the journey that Keith took to becoming an actor and a director. So grab your favorite seat and let's get rolling. Keith, man, so good to see you. Really appreciate you joining us. We go back a few decades, and
right.
Man, when I saw you performing, I didn't get a chance to see you perform, but when I saw you teasing a performance of a movie about a theater production about a movie, I said, man, I got to get Keith on the show. I've been wanting you on the show for a while, so glad you could join us, buddy.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. And it's great seeing you. Great seeing you again. It's been too long.
It really has. It really has, man. We've got some great memories. So glad we can make some new ones. Well, man, before we dive into kind of the best and thoughts relating to screen acting, I'd love to get your backstory. I'd love to get your origin story. So maybe take us back to where that love of acting began for you. Was there, a moment? Was there a play? Was there a film? Was there something that kind of ignited that spark in you that said, man, I love this acting thing?
Yeah, well, actually, for me, it actually goes back to pre-birth. My parents, when they started dating, were doing Medea together in college. And so I was actually almost named Jason. And then I was thinking, well, I'm glad you didn't name me after a play where my mother killed her children. So, and then I kind of gravitated toward. I did a lot of school plays and children's theater plays, and I was the lead in my second grade play. There was the Star Spangled Banner. I played Francis Scott Key.
Wow. Well,
To me, one of the big I had two big turning points. One was, I wasn't very popular in grade school. I was a year younger than everybody else. I was smaller and not into sports, kind of geeky. And I had a teacher at Wilson Elementary School, Mr. Burns, and kind of took me under his wing. And one time there was a talent show, and I think one of my parents suggested Casey at the Bat. So I went into the school library and I got Casey at the Bat. And during a recess, I was learning it. And I was always a quick study, so I was learning it pretty quick. And Mr. Burns saw me. He said, "How long have you been working on this?" I said, "Just since we started recess." He goes, "And you know that?" I knew like 2/3 of it.
wow.
And he took me around to every other class and had me perform what I knew so far. And so he kind of made me the star of the show. By the time it came around, they saved me for last. I was the finale. Everybody knew I was going to do it. Yeah. And it really kind of helped me. So I owe a lot to that teacher, Mr. Burns.
Wow. So Keith, you've had many hats throughout your life: actor, director, professor, and also teacher at a performing arts school that is really it's a place that you're very familiar. It's your alma mater.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a proud 1982 alumni, the Cincinnati School for Creative Performing Arts. And my wife is an alumni as well. And we had family in Cincinnati. We were both looking for an excuse to get back to Cincinnati. We were living in the DC area at the time. And once my children were out of high school and they were off in college, so I wasn't needed to be with them on a day-to-day basis, I just happened to be looking at the alumni page on Facebook. And the principal had posted, "Well, congratulations to the following retiring teachers, blah, 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 blah." And one of them was drama. And I went, "Oh, drama?" And so I wrote him and I sent him my materials and said, "Listen, I don't wish to appear ghoulish, but if you're looking to replace the person, I'd love to be considered." And he wrote me back the next day and said, "I'm so glad you wrote me. I've sent your materials to our artistic director. Your interview is tomorrow and you're the last one."
Gosh. Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's a thrill to be back. I just love the school, and it's wonderful to come back and give back to an institution that meant so much to me growing up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's dive into acting itself, and I wanted to find out from you when you think about great acting, especially acting for screen.
Mhm.
What is it that defines great acting to you? Is it something that's transformative? Is it emotional range? Is it subtlety, or is it something else? What is it that defines great acting?
Yeah, I think if there was a Keith Cassidy action figure, uh, every time you push the button, if it was a talking one of those where you push it and it talks,
Yeah.
I would probably say, raise the stakes, raise the stakes, raise the stakes. That's kind of the mantra. I say that probably any scene can be made better if you raise the stakes. So when I look at great acting, and I said, whether you're doing something a lighthearted romance or a real intense drama, it has to be important to you.
Yeah.
And so that's really what I see in screen acting and stage acting. You know, is the scene really, really important? I think one of the great actors that we have right now that there's an actor named John Bernthal, and he was on The Walking Dead. He's plays the Punisher. He's made a lot of movies in the Wolf of Wall Street. Every scene that man does is you know whatever he's talking about at that moment, that is the most important thing in the world to him. And I just that's what I respect in an actor, somebody who can really make every scene just absolutely important, no matter what it is. It could be a lighthearted throwaway comedy, and the comedy's good. It's going to be funnier if the stakes are high.
Yeah, yeah. When you think, and Bernthal's great. I mean, I love him in The Punisher for sure, and he's been able to take on that role in multiple variations of the MCU for streaming MCU, that is. But man, yeah, he's pretty phenomenal. Good choice. What about screen actors from the past? Maybe those you grew up with, or maybe those you studied. That still stand out to you today as like, man, those are kind of the pinnacle of the acting craft.
Oh, there's a whole lot. I think for me growing up, one of the biggest influences was Jack Nicholson. For me, it's like I kind of copied myself after him in a few shows, which isn't a great creative choice, but you can't help it when you really admire someone that much. And what I loved about Nicholson was just the fearlessness. He has absolutely no inhibitions whatsoever. Whatever the scene needs, he's going to go 110%. He's not going to care about what it looks like. I just remember that scene. There's a scene where he's playing the Joker and Batman, and he's just making an entrance, and he's like farting his way out of the screen. It's like, ah! And then he goes, and he lets that fart propel him. Oh, yeah, just this wonderful, just absolutely total lack of inhibition whatsoever.
Jack is dead, my friend. You can call me Joker. And as you can see, I'm a lot happier.
And then you see that in Cuckoo's Nest, and even in some of his later films, the romantic comedies he did later on in his career, just this absolute fearlessness and total reality. I think that's important. When you mentioned film acting before, I think listening is being very much into the moment. I think reacting is always important, but in film acting, it's super important because that camera's right on you. Um, I've always said that if the actor believes it and they're treating it realistically, the audience will believe it. One of the best examples I ever had of that, it was not from an actor, it was from a nurse. When my first wife and I were expecting our first baby, we took those mommy and me classes, and she was trying to show us baby CPR, how to do CPR on a baby. And
Yeah.
she had this little baby doll that you get in Toys R Us. And she was going, okay, now you flip it over and you gently pat its back. And she did this for a few minutes, just showing everything. And she said, does everybody got that? Okay, well, and she just dropped the baby. The entire room went, because she was treating it like a real baby. We accepted that it was a real baby. And when she just dropped it to go on to the next topic, the entire room was mortified.
Wow. Wow. I love that. I love that. Yeah. Real world example. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. There are certain performers that stand out all the time. I mean, like you mentioned, Jack Nicholson, Bernthal, those that you're like, okay, I can't wait to see them and what's next. And going back and looking at the body of the work. But when you think about maybe one-off performances, are there any performers that are maybe kind of under the radar that are not the household names all the time, that have stood out to you, or certain performances that you think about, you're like, man, I want to go back and look at that again to see what I can learn from it?
Actually, if you're talking about like under the radar, Christopher Guest. I actually, for years, I've been doing this for 20 years, where when I'm start talking to a class about characterization, I'll show clips from about 7 or 8 Christopher Guest movies. And I'll say, now these may have something in common. You tell me if what they have in common, and don't blurt it out, kind of wait until the end. And, well, they're all comedies. Yeah, most of them are comedies, not all of them. I had a Few Good Men in there. That wasn't a comedy. And usually I'll go like 0 for 30. Yeah, not one person in a class of 30 will pick up that it was the same actor in every clip, because he was that different in each clip. Talk about one-off performances for me, and it's not an under the radar. I think everyone considers it a great performance, but for me, my favorite screen performance of all time was Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird. He's a brilliant, wonderful actor anyway, but he was really in the zone, and I just loved. I think what gets me the most is the pauses that he has. He always takes that, whenever he's asked a question, there's always that moment where he's thinking of what he's going to say and the best way to say it. And I just thought, we talked about high stakes, and could there be higher stakes in his speech, to the jury, his summation to the jury, when he says, "In the name of God, believe this man." That was wonderful. Oh, I mentioned, I think we have to say, because of our mutual background here, I did that Christopher Guest thing when I was at Gardner-Webb, and Reed Lackey is the one student who picked up.
Yes, Reed.
Reed Lackey said, "That was the same actor. In fact, I think his name's Chris Guest."
Well, we will definitely do a shout out to Reed. Reed has been a guest on this show before as well, with Nathan. Nathan Rouse. We've had both Nathan and Reed on the show. So kudos to you, Reed. If you're watching, good job, man. Good job. Good job. Well, you mentioned Gregory Peck taking those pauses, and I think that goes back to what you said earlier about listening. As an actor, because when we're having conversations, there is a pause at times when you're just talking to somebody. There's a pause, and you want to think about maybe what you're going to say next. Sometimes we'll use filler language, but when you have that authentic pause, it does become much more believable.
Yeah, and in his case, it was a real character choice. Because I think there is a line in the book, I forget if it's in the movie or not, but they say that Atticus always knew the right thing to say. And he said, we won't give him much credit, but we will give him credit for that. He always seemed to know the right thing to say. And I think Gregory Peck took that line about his character and really made it that he was going to make sure he had the right thing to say. It didn't come naturally. He had to think about it. And once he thought about it, it would come out the way he wanted it.
Well, we are joined right here on Meet Me at the Movies with Keith Cassidy, former professor of theater at Gardner-Webb University. He and I have known each other for over 2+ decades, which is kind of nuts, and just so glad to have him on the show. We're talking about film acting and also stage acting. After the break, we're going to maybe talk about some differences between the two, and maybe some of Keith's thoughts as he's done this. For how many years have you been involved in acting? Like 5+ decades, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going back to early elementary school.
So stick around. We'll be right back after this quick intermission on Meet Me at the Movies.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch
As Cleveland County's premier event facility, LeGrand Center is the ideal location for any event. The LeGrand Center is located 45 minutes west of Charlotte, 45 minutes north of Spartanburg, and just a little over an hour east of Asheville. Whether you're a small business looking for a place for an off-site meeting or a bride looking for that special location for her wedding, LeGrand Center is the perfect place for you.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hello, welcome back to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, hanging out with Keith Cassidy, and we are talking about acting on this particular episode. So we could call this Acting 101. So if you are looking for continuing ed credit, maybe, just maybe, this will be the show for you. Well, Keith, let's talk about stage acting and film acting. When you are evaluating kind of styles, what makes a good stage actor, what makes a good film actor, what are the differences that you look for when you're critiquing it or evaluating it or maybe even writing a review on it?
So the art of creating a character is the same. So the art of acting doesn't change. Now there are techniques that are very different. And I always tell people, you know, if I'm in a play, and especially if it's proscenium, where the audience is just on one side of the action and they're far away, some people as much as 40, 50 feet away, and you say, I saw your wife with another man, you know, I have to go like that. Whereas in a film, you could say, I saw your wife with another man. And it is, as long as you're feeling it the same,
Right.
you know, my feeling of that, my shock, my betrayal is going to be exactly the same, but it can be communicated just with the eyes. It doesn't have to be the whole head. But, you know, somebody 100 feet away, they're not going to see that. There was a great video Michael Caine made on acting for the camera. And two things I remember from that story. He's talking about Jack Lemmon, and he was working with George Cukor in his first movie, and he says, "Less, Jack, less." He goes, "Okay, did it again. No, cut, less, Jack, less. Cut, Jack, I need less." He goes, "George, if I do any less, I won't be acting at all." Now you're getting it. Because we don't want to see acting, right? I always tell people the best compliment I can give you is, I don't see you acting. I had a theater professor at University of Florida, and we'd be in the graduate office rehearsing a scene, and he would walk by the office, stick his head and go, "Oh, you're rehearsing, aren't you?" I could tell, and walked away, and we're like, "Ah!" And then the other thing he talked about, you're talking about the difference between film and stage. Michael Caine talks about when he did Educating Rita. And he said, when you saw the play, Rita never shut up. And so everybody was looking at Rita. It was a real star vehicle for that actress playing Rita. And he said, well, I'm doing this. He says, well, why are you doing that? It's you're the star. Why are you doing? You should be doing a film called Educating Frank, not Educating Rita. And he goes, no, because I knew that in a film, in order for Rita's lines to make sense, they'd have to cut to me because it'd be my reactions to her. And he said, that's something I know I can do as a film actor. I can react. So I think that those reactions, I think reaction's always important, but in film, I think it's super important because that camera can be right on you. And if your stakes are high and your feeling is real, you're going to communicate that. One of my best quotes I've ever heard was from an actor in South Florida, used to give workshops. He said, there's no such thing as overacting. He said, if you're real, If you are real, you're in the moment, you can be as big and over the top as you want. He said, what we call overacting is when people aren't real.
Yeah.
He said, if you're not real, if you're making faces and you're mugging, that's not real. But if you're real, doesn't matter how big and over the top you are. You're going to come in. You're going to get that across to the audience.
I love that. I love that. And I'm glad you mentioned that Michael Caine piece, because you could still, I mean, I don't know how many years ago that was done, but I mean, it was a long time ago, but it's still got such rich material, and you can find it if you just go to YouTube and search for Michael Caine Master Acting Class. You'll find this video that we're referring to. It's just still amazing today. And that's just a beautiful thing about someone who knows what they're talking about.
Right.
It's timeless. It's timeless. And I love that. I love that.
And he's talking about some of the stuff we just mentioned, which is the art doesn't change. He's just talking about here are things you can do to take that character and make it more accessible for a film camera. He's just talking, it's purely technical. He's not talking about here's how to create a character. He's saying here's how to act in front of a camera.
What I'd like someone to do.
Yeah. There are some talents, and we talked about some of them, that are amazing as lead acting talents. But are there any that come to mind for you when you think about ensemble acting that really, when you think about ensemble acting, you're like, okay, if I could cast one person in an ensemble, I'd want to see this person there every single time?
Well, just off the top of my head, I have to say they don't call it 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon for nothing. I can't think of an actor who's done more ensemble work than Kevin Bacon. He's been in 1,000 movies, worked with big ensembles in each one.
That's a great choice. Great choice. And the guy continues to do stuff. I want to get you to talk to me about, from an actor standpoint, is it the actor or is it the director that brings that performance out, or is it a little of both, and maybe offer some thoughts and examples that maybe speak to both of those?
Ultimately, you got to give credit to the actor, because it's that actor that has to do it. And that's not to say you can't have wonderful directors who guide you. And certainly on stage, directors on stage work with actors on their characterizations all the time. It's not as consistent that way in film. You have some directors that are very good with it. Mike Nichols and Spike Lee, they do work with actors, and they do have extensive rehearsals. But there are other, I remember I saw an interview with John Travolta, and he was talking about doing Blowout with Brian De Palma. And he went to Brian De Palma and said, what do you think the motivation is for this? And he says, what are you asking me for? You're the actor. We're paying you $1 million to make these kind of decisions. And you do have a lot of directors that just, they'll tell you when they get it and when they don't get it. But other than that, they're worried about where the camera's going to be and what the lighting looks like. And
right.
I was doing a small independent film one time, and they would set up the shot, and then they go action, we do it, and they cut, and they start setting up the next shot. I'm saying, can we do another take? I said, I tripped on that take. Oh, but we can cut before that. I said, you spend all that time setting it up. I said, it doesn't take that much extra time to give me a few extra takes. I said, we didn't rehearse this. Let me kind of feel, especially if I screw up. Clint Eastwood also does a thing where after he's gotten everything he wants, he always gives them one extra one.
Yeah.
He says, this is the one to play. Just show me something different. And sometimes that's what makes it in. Sometimes it's so silly and over the top, it's dumb, and you'd never use it in a million years, but sometimes something comes out of that they wind up using.
Well, and that goes back to early on the show, you were talking about be real, be authentic, and sometimes allowing an actor to play around with it, and play around can mean a lot of different things, but just to do it, that freedom really shines through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the fun part. The last few minutes of the show, I'm going to ask just a few questions. And one of them relates to if you, Keith Cassidy, could step into any film role in history, you are the actor, you choose the film, any gender, any era, just for the thrill of it, what would that film and what would that role be and why?
Uh, for years, my dream role was to play McMurphy in One Flew of the Cuckoo's Nest. And I've talked about before, Nicholson was a big influence on me.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite movies of all time. Uh, and I've done the show twice. I was Billy Bibbit the first time. And then a few years ago, I finally got to be McMurphy after wanting to do it for 30 years or so.
Wow.
And the reason is that so much, and I'm not. He has the character has some very interesting flaws, but also a lot of that character is kind of like it's not that I see myself in it. It's I see what I would like to be, the person I would like to be. I would like to be the person that is courageous enough to stand up for the weaker people around me. I would like to see myself be that person. Not to say he's not perfect. He's not a superhero. He has flaws, and flaws are just as interesting to play as the good things about a character. He's resistant to authority to a fault. Where he doesn't even think about whether it's right or wrong. It's authority. So that's a flaw. And I tried to play those things as well. And that speaks to a certain insecurity as well.
So final question before we kind of wrap things up. If there are aspiring actors out there, students of cinema, maybe potential film critics, if you could choose maybe 3 film roles that you think are required, performances that you think are required viewing, maybe a master class in screen acting, what would those three films and 3 film roles be?
Well, so I've mentioned Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird. I think Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. I just recently watched that one again, and he's one of those actors that, I would tell any aspiring actor, watch his canon of films. Not only are his stakes high, he is just so completely transformed from role to role. He breathes different. Just everything about him is different. Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice.
Yeah.
I think was again, high stakes. That scene, I'll never forget that scene where she finds out what her father is saying on these tapes that she's transcribing and what it really means. Just that look on her face. I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that right now. A whole lot more, but those would be 3 good ones to start with.
That's perfect. Awesome. Keith, any final comments or thoughts you want to make sure you share before we wrap things up?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I think this is an important discussion to have. You talked about being a critic, and I think it's important to know when we're looking at these performances and these wonderful actors in film that we have a common language with which that we can evaluate them.
Keith, really appreciate you sharing your time, your talent, and the love of the craft with us. This has been awesome. And for our audience, whether you are a lifelong fan of film or if you're just discovering kind of that magic of screen acting now, I really hope that this dialogue has offered some fresh insight and some inspiration to you. For Meet Me at the Movies and the entire cast and crew, we thank you for joining us. And for this week, I'm Noel T. Manning II. That's a wrap.
Many films to view till we meet again.